Welcome to Tapped In, our weekly live show and now recorded podcast exploring what happens after our lives unravel and we commit to our embodied, magical, radical existence. I'm Siobhan. Today we have our first guest, Jazz, co-host Midori, and we're going to be getting into, if you could see in the vibes today, it's giving romance because that is the topic that Jazz has brought to the table. So before we get into all of that, I will let Miss Midori chime us in.
You are now tapped into the soft power frequency.
Okay, thank you for that. Like I said, this is a special week over here at Tapped In. If you follow us on Instagram, you'll see we've done a branding refresh and celebration of the shift that we've taken, which is now inviting special guests to join us in these conversations. We've always been talking about our journeys of embodiment and creativity, but specifically, we are focusing and inviting in our comrades, our friends, our lovers in to talk about their stories of unraveling and the life that comes after. A little about me if it's your first time watching. My name is Siobhan Dioris. I am a mother and mystic from San Francisco and the founder of The Birth Realm, which is a scientifically, politically, spiritually informed childbirth method that has a pregnancy group and a weekly reproductive justice newsletter.
And I'm Midori. I am an artist alchemist, and a baby astrologer, and Chicago's newest friendly neighborhood witch. I do oracle readings, astrology readings, and I also am a practicing photographer. And I'm here to introduce Jasmine, who's our guest today at Jas the Sun Fairy on Instagram. Jasmine Saba is a Palestinian-American artist healer born and raised in Los Angeles. A former psychotherapist, she provides transformational therapeutic care with a magical twist. Yes, we love magical twists here. Incorporating energy healing, human design, and time travel. She's here to guide, empower, and uplift the spiritual seekers and dreamers blazing their own path. Jasmine's emergent solar power framework for self-healing centers radical self-intimacy as the cornerstone for liberation, intuition, creativity, and embodiment. You can join her community on Instagram, where she shares stories, tools, and resources to support your self-discovery journey, and invite her to make magic with you at the link in our description.
Thank you so much. That was really nice to hear because I just wrote that today.
That bio is so juicy and beautiful, and things I knew and things that I want to continue to explore and get to know about you. So I am really excited. Every week we always start with celebrations. So Jazz, we'll let you go first. What are you celebrating today?
Yeah, thank you. And also, I'm just really happy to be here. I love you both dearly. I love the work that you do and just the people that you are. And I'm so honored to be your first guest. So thank you. I'm celebrating showing up today the way that I am at the place that I am because the last several weeks have been a transition phase, a lot of uncertainty and change, and I've been in a cocoon phase, and it's been feeling kind of unstable, and I haven't felt grounded or embodied, and I haven't even been showing up online much or in my business. So it's kind of fun to be showing up here, and I'm curious to see kind of what comes out. And I feel like it's kind of jump starting me into this new identity and timeline that I'm emerging into. So just celebrating, like, being patient and kind with myself through that cocoon phase, and not pushing or placing urgency on like this next version coming out. Yeah.
Wow. I think I'm celebrating the same. I'm celebrating with you and similar, and I'm just going to highlight this comment because it's very projectors and we'll get a little into human design and what that means if y'all don't know, but human design has these profile types. Jazz is a projector. I am also a projector. The audience has got a lot of projectors. Midori, you are spicing it up as a manifester?
I'm a generator.
Oh, I always...
She's bringing the energy.
Yeah. Yes. You're just a good manifester, I think is why I always think about you being a manifester. Sweet. Well, I would say I'm celebrating the same. I've really been in that similar season of like deep faith, deep patience. I love the cocoon analogy because I recently did a butterfly kit with my son where we got the little caterpillars and they were in their little I don't know what you would call it, space. And we released them. And I was just saying before we hit live that one of the butterflies had an injured wing and now just lives in the garden and kind of like walks around, flutters a little bit. I was really worried, but it's been about a week now that they seem to be thriving. So I'm low-key feeling like that butterfly. Like I don't feel like I have soared quite yet, but I'm just like practicing deep faith and patience and everything. And also just celebrating witnessing things coming together for a lot of people around me, which is really exciting and kind of like feeling into that vibe that's like, okay, I'm watching it all happen for my friends, my clients, the people around me, a lot of just this spring energy of things coming to fruition, things coming to justice, and just patiently waiting my turn.
Yeah.
I also think about Siobhan that you're a Cancer, and that's like the height of or like the summer, the summer as a season. So it's just, I think it's timing. I love that. I'm also celebrating. We're talking about romance today, and I'm celebrating like all the ways that I've learned how to like romance myself and like really ground into, instead of like always outsourcing romance to experiences with other people. While that is like always really meaningful, like how to romance myself in like the daily rituals. And also like, and then the other piece of like opening myself up to like dating and trying things out and experimenting. And yeah, it's cute. Spring is here.
I think with Venus as your chart ruler, I feel like you really embody the Venusian archetype.
Yeah, Siobhan's been telling me a lot about that.
Yeah.
Definitely the lover archetype.
Yeah.
Total lover archetype for sure. Jazz, have you ever thought about the like archetypal psychology and what archetypes? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I took Captolia's amazing quiz recently for like the second time, and my archetypes changed. I shifted out of the sage, which I actually like. My archetypes right now are the magician, the lover, and maybe the creator. I'm forgetting the third one, but I love magician and lover and embodying those two.
I so see that. Yeah, totally. I love, and I didn't think about that before, but now when I think, I'm like, back when we did the Twitch lives, I feel like you were always down for like the romance, the dating topic, the lover topics, and I just love this, and that's why I'm really glad that you're here to explore more of this, because I think your philosophy and your framework that you've developed over time, I've noticed it shift since just like the past year or so of knowing you. I think your initially like your background with psychology was really like I just see the way that you have like continued to form and synthesize all this information as a sage, which now I think is very more like alchemical, like a magician. It still is that like I'm mixing these things together and putting together something that is really unique and potent. So I just want to let you share more about that, because when we asked you what you want to chat about, the things we knew that you've talked a lot about were human design and timeline jumping. But then you were like, I actually want to share a new part of me. And so bringing it back a little before you get into that, given that our focus is like what happens after the unraveling, what I know unraveling is like such a large topic to cover, but in terms of this place you're at now, what kind of story is relevant to your current the current way that you've been piecing life together?
Yeah. I love that you're using the word unraveling, because the spider and the spider web has been a symbol that's been tagging along with me the past year when it comes to thinking about reality creation. And when I think about unraveling, I'm thinking about becoming conscious of the stories that are looping in our mind and bodies, and becoming aware of their origin stories and many of the stories that started before us ancestrally, and getting and connecting to your power and choice to decide if you want to continue living those stories, and if there's new ones that you want to start writing into existence. And so I think I definitely started this unraveling journey about 7 years ago with therapy, which led to me becoming a therapist and wanting to show up in service, offering healing and things and guidance and things like that. But then found myself definitely into the spiritual, which my therapist is a catalyst into that. I wasn't connected to spirituality or any belief system until starting therapy and starting that healing journey. So there was like a soft launch with that. And then definitely in 2020, there was like a huge initiation. And my therapist actually recommended I see a psychic medium, which was completely new to me. I wasn't in that world at all, but I saw a psychic medium and I connected to my dad, who has been passed for like 14 years. And I feel like he initiated my unraveling further, and my connection with the unseen, and my connection with my intuition and my ancestors. And so since then, I think another initiation was somatic healing and connecting to my body in a new way, and with my pleasure in a new way, with regulating my nervous system and coming into balance with myself, which is what led to my purpose being revealed to me, and embodying the values and the truths that feel authentic to me. And so where I'm at today, and this kind of story that I'm writing and this dream world that I'm building, I call it the romance timeline. And this is kind of the life that I want to experience and build for myself. And so I want to shout out Ari Felix for the dream world language, and also P the Fairy, who played a huge part in teaching reality creation in manifestation in a way that I hadn't heard of before, that really like changed the game.
I feel like I didn't hear part of that because it was cutting out. Was that cutting out for you too, Siobhan?
I heard everything.
You heard everything. That was just me.
Yeah, I guess that's good. So romance as why is romance the thing that calls to you? We think a lot about it, and we've talked a lot about dating, but you mentioned your dad, so I'm guessing that there's something far beyond just like relational romantic partnership. What does romance mean for you?
Yeah, so I declared I was building the romance timeline last October. And it felt like a declaration. If I wrote it down and I told someone, like, this is what I'm creating, this is what I want. I want to feel horny for life. I want to feel
Mm.
open and receptive to life. I want my life to drip with sweetness and pleasure and art and beauty. And I want there to be intimacy in all forms. And I just want my life to feel romantic. That's kind of the frequency I anchored into, and I got clarity of around this is what I want. This is what I want to feel like. And in my natal chart, I have my sun in the 5th house, which is the house of pleasure and fun and creativity. And I feel like I began to get to know that part of myself more. And it's my chart ruler conjoined Pluto. So it's a big part of me. And it felt like a declaration of like giving myself permission to enjoy these parts of life and to feel like I could make it my whole life.
I love that. Well, I have a question, but I feel like I'm asking all the questions, so Midori, jump in. But my question is just now, like synthesizing that with timeline jumping. Can you give folks who may not be familiar with timeline jumping a little background of what that means, and then maybe lead us
Yeah.
into how you've developed this romance timeline theory
Yeah.
practice? Would
So
you say it's a theory or a practice?
the romance timeline is my world. And I thought about holding like a workshop to help people gain clarity around the timeline slash world they want to build. And I'm finding my own language with this as well. But for now, that's kind of the language I'm using. And I want to help people get clear on the identity that they want to embody, the feeling of how they want their life to feel and taste, and to make it a whole sensory experience. So, timeline jumping is a modality that I was trained in by P the Fairy. It's a process that they channeled, and it's a process that other people do, but they created their own process. So it's a reality creation modality. It's using breath awareness and visualization to embody the next available version of yourself. And so it's a psychosomatic process. We're moving into the body, and your current timeline, we each have like our own private reality that we experience life through, our own lens, our own perspective. And it's created through the thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and emotions that we carry, and the sensations in our body. And so all timelines exist right now. If you're, I get a little nervous bringing in the quantum physics part. Like there's a little insecurity there. But I feel like all of us know, all of us here listening, watching, we're electromagnetic beings. All of time is the space-time continuum is all happening right now. And we have a like vibrational orbit around us, right? We're giving off our own frequency. And reality, life, is a neutral reflection of that. Your life, your external reality is a reflection of your internal world. And yes, we live within systems that affect all of us, that impact all of us, but there's also the private experience that you're having of yourself and of your life. And so with timeline jumping, the first process is identifying your current timeline, which is what sensations are you feeling in your body? What beliefs do you have about yourself and your life? And beginning to kind of dissolve that. So you're kind of like detaching from who you think you are right now knowing that there's infinite versions and possibilities of you. And as you're dissolving, you're kind of questioning, okay, if I believe that if I believe that if I don't feel like I'm a writer, but I want to be, I want that identity, I would ask myself, like, where did this come from? Who put this in my head that I need something outside of myself to be a writer? So that's kind of starting the dissolving process and seeing that all these thoughts and feelings started from somewhere, and we can decide if we want to hold on to them. And then we move into void space. And moving into void space, which is just like emptiness, I like to call it the cosmic womb, where everything and nothing exists. It's that infinite potential. We move in there and kind of forget who we are. We get to reconnect with ourselves as awareness, as potential. And we get to then decide and align with the next available self that wants to be embodied. So you get to meet your future self in this process. You get to feel them and touch them and speak to them. And then there's a merging that happens. So you merge with this self and become them, and you embody them. And it's happening at this somatic level. We're very focused on breath and awareness throughout this process. And so you emerge from this, it's like a meditation process, as this embodiment of this new self. And from there, you just continue choosing them. You continue making choices as them. And yeah, I think the last thing is that it's like a whole identity. You're working with identity. And I think manifestation has to start with identity, has to start with the body, or else it's not grounded and it's not sustainable.
Dang. That's so
And I've
powerful.
done one of Jasmine's timeline jumps, and it's such a cool experience. It's really, really, from the way that you facilitate, and you started with tapping back when I did it. I'd even be curious to hear how your framework has even developed since then, because that was a while ago. But to those listening, if you've never experienced something like that, it's so cool, because it's true. Like when I'll share a little of what I experienced in that specific one, because I recall that I saw myself in a home. And although that was months ago, I don't live in that home yet. I really am embodied, and I really know that I'm on the trajectory more than I was before of that rolling into my life. And if not the literal place, like I'm not there physically yet, the way that I exist within my home, I'm experiencing the way that I'm parenting, I'm experiencing more aligned with that sensation that I had during the timeline jump. So it's just really cool work.
I'm curious too, Jasmine, like what were past, I guess, identities that you held that you saw and then like, or chose to kind of like merge with like the new identity? I'm curious about like what examples of that you've experienced.
Yeah. I do want to say that I feel like I'm continually expanding into myself and clarifying my desired self and my desired reality. And I've been investigating and experimenting timeline jumping for a year now. And in the early days, I had a lot of blocks around it, because timeline jumping is a pretty simple, quick process. And you can experience potent, radical transformation in a matter of 20 to 30 minutes. And even small shifts are huge, right? When it comes to identity and embodiment. And so in the early days, I was using timeline jumping to open up to change being simpler, to change being more
Mm.
pleasurable. I
Mhm.
was attached to shadow work being like a grueling process, very much like very scorpionic, and attached to it in a like not helpful way.
Yeah.
It's like I was looking for um I was looking for change to just be this like really like scorpionic thing when it didn't need to be, and I was like attaching to that, and I had a block around transformation being easeful and also it being a fast process. And so through timeline jumping and through this process, I would notice when I was operating from a victim mentality. And I think it makes sense why I go there and why we go there, especially with trauma history. You know, you can get triggered and it's very easy to go to a place of feeling powerless, of feeling like you don't have control over what's happening to you. And every time that would happen, it was a chance for me to root into my power and my authority to choose how I want to respond to things that are happening in my life. So that's kind of how I began using it. And I think for anyone opening up to timeline jumping, I think there are like affirmations that you can jump into to embody more of. And you might already believe them, but if you're open to believing them like 30% more, you can do a timeline jump to embody that and accelerate that process. So, starting with like safety, with feeling safer in your experience in yourself, that is the foundation of timeline jumping, right? I've heard people say like movement requires safety,
Mm-hmm.
so you can use this modality to anchor into that more and to open up to change being more easeful.
I feel like that brings in like polyvagal theory and the ways that I've been incorporating that into my birth realm work, which is like, and shout out to the fairy god sis of the first person to tell me, like, it's called the soul nerve that wanders. And to me, really seeing this in the process of like child rearing, that this level of safety, which you like do opening up, like when you started the session with tapping, or if it's breath work, you've talked a lot about the breath, that being in that place then allows the soul to wander. And I don't think we can wander and connect and do these things when we're not in that, like, whatever you want to call it, a parasympathetic nervous state that gives that sense. And so, yeah, I'm just thinking a lot about how, and I actually would be curious to ask you. So in the birth realm, what we do in this pregnancy group twice a month is that I'll guide them into the birth realm. And it's not necessarily timeline jumping. Although this is why I'm curious to ask you, because it's more like astral travel, journeying there and coming back. And so in this framework, the birth realm is the timeline that is their inner world. And the whole point is to practice going there throughout your pregnancy so that when labor comes, you can more easily access that timeline, because that's where your ancestors come in to support you. That's where you've been preparing, meeting your baby, meeting all these like guides and whatever, as like a laboring method. But when you hear that, no, I'm like wondering, not like, am I doing it wrong? But like, I'm wondering, like, is that different, do you think, from timeline jumping? Or maybe do I need to like consciously acknowledge more that like, you're actually not returning to the same place that we left from? Like, we're going here and we're coming back. What are your, I don't know. I don't know what exactly my question is, but what are you thinking when I say that?
It feels like every time you travel to the birth realm, everyone is solidifying that timeline.
Your Sag rising and
My Sag
sun and Pluto are like meeting right now. Frameworks bonding over framework. Really. That's so fascinating. You know what I was thinking about, and like for like my readings, like, you know, a lot of what we do is talking about like dreams and bringing up the subconscious through like images. So I'm wondering, like, when people don't know what they desire, like, say, you know, there, I think that what you said, like the clarifying part of like what you desire is really
Yeah.
critical to timeline jumping. Like, what is that? Do people have to know what they desire before they go into a session with you, or is that clarified while, yeah, like through the process? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I've worked with people who feel clear on an identity, or they have an affirmation that they want to bring into the jump to embody. But I can also help people get clear on their vision, what they want to call in. And you can also start with like, well, what tension are you experiencing right now? What's not feeling too hot, and what's going on there, and what might we um, see from peering into that, and what does I want to shapeshift into? So I really meet people where they're at any point in the process to help them feel clear. And you can like, it doesn't have to be a very specific desire. It can be a feeling, it can be a color that you want to use as a symbol to experience more of. And then over time, you get more and more clear.
What have been the most influential ways of clarifying your desire? I know astrology tells us a lot.
I think I want to backtrack and share a little bit about my solar power framework, because I want to make it clear at like what point does someone do a timeline jump? Because it's
Ooh,
not
yes,
like
please.
there's like, you know, it's a process. I feel like in my head it's a process. So the solar power framework is kind of this emergent self-healing framework that I'm developing, that's really bridging my background in psychotherapy with my spiritual practice and energy work and the magical. And I feel I really value and care about helping people develop radical self-intimacy with themselves, with their shadow, with their needs, with their desires, with their dreams. And so, yeah, and just relating to yourself with such softness, such openness, and respect and acceptance, and really rooting into that. And a way that I do that is through like self dialogue with all your parts, and helping people see themselves and feel themselves as an authority, as the one in the driver's seat, the one writing their story, and then to see their parts as, you know, part of their internal family, if I'm going to reference internal family systems theory. And just getting to know yourself intimately in that way, so you're able to know like, oh, if there's tension about, like, I've had tension lately about taking up more space. I feel like I'm on a threshold of taking up even more space online and just in the way that I show up. And so the tension that I feel, I'm feeling these younger parts of me who are feeling unsafe, who are not so sure about moving forward. And when I can hold this philosophy of like, okay, like, these younger parts have a right to be skeptical about what I want to move into, and I respect them, and I want to understand them, and I want to know what they need from me to feel safe, and I want to be that inner caretaker and parent that I didn't have when I was younger. And so it's having this relationship with yourself to be able to support yourself through the tension that comes up. And we have parts that don't feel safe to dream, doesn't feel safe to have desires. There's a lot of shame we have around desires. And so getting to know what beliefs that they're holding from past experiences, and through connecting with them and helping them feel more safe, your dreams and desires reveal themselves because they feel like that those parts feel like they can take up more space and they make themselves known. And so when I identify a desire or a tension, whatever one comes first, I'm working to see how I can create more congruence internally, this agreement among all my parts, so that we're all on the same page and we can move forward together. And once I've kind of done that through self-dialogue, through EFT tapping, nervous system stuff, there's so many different ways to do this, then I feel ready to timeline jump. And that kind of ties it all together. And that really accelerates all the internal transformation that I did. And that accelerates it, and then I can really begin to see my reality shift.
I'm literally envisioning you like a duck with like all these little ducklings of like your past self, your younger inner children, these little tender, like all the little tender parts of you just like trailing behind you, like, come on, y'all.
And that congruence part of like, you know, inner child, inner teen healing, or like meeting those parts, I think is so profound, and thinking about what you're developing as a framework that may be missing from others is that like when you're not aware of who's driving, when your inner teen or your inner child is driving and maybe like driving those desires without your conscious awareness, like that just sounds so powerful to have that as like the first stepping stone before your timeline jumping, just to get clear. And that like takes time, you know, like I'm really realizing like I conceptually, intellectually know about inner child teen healing, but I actually haven't been in self-dialogue or like holding those parts of me. I've been like kind of just like abandoning or neglecting those parts of myself, even though I intellectually understand what inner child, inner teen healing is, you know, like there's just so much like verbiage out there, like psychology verbiage about that. So it's just really cool to hear about what you're developing, and like, yeah, to have that as like a stepping stone to like really embody first.
Yeah, I really love hearing all of this because, as we all know, my question always, whenever it comes to magic, spirituality, all of it is like, what's the point? Like, what is the point when it comes to this collective timeline that we're living on, that we came at this moment in history to participate in? There's a reason why, you know, even though we have our personal like timelines where we're aligning to, there still is this like participation in the collective. And so I would just love to hear more about that, of how you see timeline jumping being integrated into a like liberation strategy or like revolutionary effort.
I feel like this will be a collaborative answer because I really admire how you're always thinking about that, coming from that place. And I can sometimes still feel like the individualistic rubbing up against me. I think using timeline jumping as a self-liberation practice of freeing yourself from the ties and knots of the not self, which I don't know why that's coming through. It's a human design term, the not self. To come home to yourself and to get to know who you are outside of all the conditioning and the programming, and then getting closer to the core of your unique essence and embodying that. And that is medicine for yourself and the collective. And I think we all have such different roles to play. And whoever you discover yourself to be in that process, your also discovering like your role in the collective and the revolution and the healing. And it might not seem like directly connected, but I think you're part of the web still. And I'm thinking about how a large part of my identity and my mission is to embody this tenderness and this care and this romance, and to relate to myself that way, and to relate to the people in my community in that way as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that is like inherently anti-capitalist, because to even expand the definition of romance when there is a, engineering of why we've limited that to romantic partners, monogamous romantic partners, that along with like all the things, like you said, like all the kind of like knots we're untying, like they really are, the other end of that knot is tied to capitalist conditioning or colonial conditioning, whether it's the way we, accept our beauty, the way that we see our role in our families. A lot of that is like, you really can't disentwine like the reasoning behind a lot of these things we have to undo. So I think in that sense it is. And I do think that, like you said, like it is really radical to just participate in a practice that is intended to get you to your closest self in a society that needs us to be as distant from that as possible in order to, labor and such.
Yeah, I think all of us, we've been conditioned to be disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from our humanity, our emotions, our body. And my framework and all the modalities I use, the whole point of it is to reunite you with yourself and your spirit. And I love the definition of romance. I pulled it up. It's a feeling of excitement and mystery associated with love. And I love the word mystery being used in there. And I think a lot about, like, I even started calling the unknown the mystery just because it sounds sexier and it sounds more romantic to see it that way. And I think it's romantic to be in tune with nature's cycles and the seasons, and to surrender and welcome in periods of darkness and confusion, and just knowing that there's a place for all of it. There's a purpose in all of it.
I love it.
Calling in a sexier future. I love it.
Yes.
Mystery does sound so much more appealing.
I love me some mystery.
We all love mystery. We're all very romantic people, I think.
Mystery and drama. Well, my 5th house is ruled by Taurus. So I feel like that's where the lover energy really like feels at home in there. What I was thinking about just the term of mystery was Chibuzo, who is our guest next week, made this post that I just tried looking for it, but I couldn't find it. But it was about the excitement of, if they compared it to like seeing your longtime partner in the grocery store in the middle of the week, and like that feeling that it's so exciting, mysterious, yet also boring and uninteresting to anybody else. And I feel like that is like a core piece of romance that she drew out. That's like, that is kind of part of the romance, is like no one really, like others wouldn't even really appreciate the level of detail because it's so personal and connected to our desire. Just like the language between lovers, like, like just this like secret, mysterious, like almost like another timeline that you've opened up with somebody else that has its own whole, sorry, my whole screen went black for a second. Yeah, it's just really beautiful, and like you said, like just sexy and like enticing. It's like, what's down there? Which also makes it really scary. How has like that fear in romance and like how does maybe that's a question like the romance timeline, how do you deal with fear in that? Have you confronted fear in that? Because I know for me, like having gone through like I mean anybody that's probably gone through a heartbreak, like the next person that you find yourself like kind of going down that road, even if it is yourself, like that vulnerability and the fear of like, oh my gosh, like the fear of mystery really too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to share a little bit more about the romance timeline and kind of broaden that question of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So, the romance timeline, I kind of shared a few of those words of like what it feels like, and there's lots of fifth house stuff, but it's just this openness and this receptivity with life and anything that comes my way. And so it's also there's relaxation and there's rest and there's one thing I started doing is like anytime I smell a rose, I like stick my whole face in there and I give it a little kiss and I say thank you and I see myself in the flowers, and that just feels like a total romance timeline thing to do. And I see my like when I envision my romance timeline, like I envision myself cooking my meals and taking my time with them. And
Mm.
another aspect of it is normalizing my moodiness, normalizing my emotional self. That was a big part of my romance timeline. And I wanted to bring up rest because I had a lot of, like last winter, I had a lot of fear and resistance come up around rest. And as a projector, that's a big part of our embodiment is to be in a restful state, easeful state, and moving a lot slower than the rest of the population. And that I hit a wall where like that was not feeling safe. And I
That's
was
how I feel hearing you say that.
yeah. And I was resisting rest so hard. I like literally for a month was in such a dark place because I was refusing a nap. And I was like, I'm the existential kink language of like, I was so attached to that feeling of depletion and that feeling of exhaustion. I didn't want to let it go. I couldn't imagine life and success without that struggle. And so moving through that, finally surrendering and affirming my safety to move at my own pace was a big part of the romance timeline process. And I feel like that was a foundational piece.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the reason I said I get tight, like I tighten a little bit is because like I do value rest and like, I am happy to rest, but there's just like, again, the safety of like capitalism always to me. All problems come back to capitalism.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I thought about as you were saying that is when you actually like start to experience, and I love the simplicity of what you're like, like I'm simply visualizing myself taking my time cooking dinner. And to so many people, when especially like in the commodification of spiritual practices or whatever you want to call them, like embodiment practices, people being like, well, I'm visualizing myself at the ATM pulling out $1,000, like, like that to me is just so gorgeous. That's like it's literally just about the way I'm experiencing my life and that trust that everything else will come in.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I want to ask you is like, what is that experience like when you start, like, how do you, I'm thinking just the pot, like receiving
Mm-hmm.
and like the experience of when these things from the romance timeline have started. And I know like some of them have, like, obviously you've been at this since last fall. And so what has that experience been like again, or how does the work continue when you actually start to receive these things? How do you like adjust to that? And what have you noticed in your life since you started to receive?
I've been receiving a lot of big stuff in the last month, and receiving wasn't feeling safe, even though I was receiving everything that I've asked for and I was expecting it. It was another thing for it to be there and noticing how my nervous system was responding.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, when I was in like I manifested staying in Joshua Tree for a couple weeks for free in a beautiful home filled with art. There was so much art in that house. And it manifested so easily and so beautifully. And I got there and I couldn't relax for a week. And that gave me an opportunity to sit with my parts that weren't feeling safe with it and were feeling skeptical. And so I held a ceremony with myself on a Sunday and released and cried and affirmed that I am safe. And that I've been using these affirmations. I am safe, I am loved, I am okay. And that can really bring me back. And I feel myself like soften and settle into my truth. And then I can care for these scared younger parts. And so I want to normalize, meeting resistance like this. And I want to normalize blocking your desires and receiving them because it makes a lot of sense. And there's always going to be a chance to learn about what you need to open up and to soften and to give that to yourself and to also be patient with your process and to offer yourself compassion for the way that you open up to the beauty that you call into your life.
I can just tell you're so embodied in this romance timeline. It's like I'm just like drinking it in because it's like nectar.
I love that.
Yeah, it's like your background too. It's just like, wow,
Yeah.
you're really
Yeah.
embodying it. And I think like you're just like really dropping me into like how much I desire for that as well. Just like the romance of life and the mystery, and the mystery is so a part of the romance, like of the not knowing when you frame it within when you frame it within the context, like the mystery within the context of like romance. And like, yeah, that's what makes life exciting is the not knowing to me. And I think like I've been playing with the idea of like having a really safe partnership that makes me feel really good, and like being in a home that I decorate and like get to like build myself, and like grounding into like how terrified I actually am of that, because I made that with my ex-partner of 10 years and then it all dissolved, and so to be kind of freaked out at the idea of like building that again, at the possibility of it all dissolving again, it kind of really scares me to feel into that. And it's just kind of like, yeah, I think like what Siobhan and I have always grounded us in this show is this idea of like the unraveling is always a possibility, and to not be afraid, because like coming on the other side of that, like the life that I've built now is still so beautiful. And so it's just like kind of the acknowledgement of like, how do you, I guess maybe I want to hear from both of you, like how do you frame building something and like desiring stability? And I guess for me, it's been like finding it within myself that like it can never really be taken away, but also like now being called to like actually build it in the physical reality and being a little freaked out of that, and holding that part of myself that's just like, I know that that's just because of my past experiences of like it dissolving away. So I'm curious, I just want to hear both of you speak on it. A lot about that.
I have an affirmation I want to share, and I love what you shared, and I think you started to say it, which is like knowing that you'll have your own back. So I've got my back is an affirmation and a belief that I've really
I
embodied.
love that.
And I've timeline jumped to embody that more, to believe that in my body more, that I've got my back, and that even when my external reality, there's chaos and change and uncertainty, I will be okay. I can create an internal sense of safety within myself. I am supported and life supports me. And I find that anchoring into that can really carry you through those fearful phases and those new beginnings that are delicious and daunting. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to share. What about you, Siobhan?
I love those affirmations, and even found myself saying something similar in the shower today. And then another one that comes to mind that I tell myself is like, the universe is designed to work in my favor. When I allow myself to move with ease, I fall into harmony with the natural flow, and that will always want to favor me. Those are, yeah. And so, I'm so Cancerian. So this concept of like building my own little shell and home is very familiar to me. And I think for me, it's really consciously working to see that as a beautiful life necessity, whereas at the beginning it was a survival strategy and a little bit, again, projector out of bitterness. Like, I got my back and I'm the only fucking one. Like, that is like such a like constant thread through my life and my story, as an 8th house Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Chiron, like literally just like, you're the only one that's got you, babe. So if it's not you, it's not going to be anybody else, because no one's got your back, which isn't true. Obviously, it's not fully true.
Yeah.
But that is just like the conscious reminder I have to give myself. But I totally relate, Midori. Like, I so relate, and like to this fear. And for me, I feel like it's a lot of times rooted in like not wanting to waste time, and that like holds me from, and like a fear of rejection. That's like, if I speak out these desires, and this happened to me yesterday. Midori knows something in my life happened yesterday where I made an invitation to someone that I really love and was rejected. And it was like that triggering reminder that like anytime I speak my desire, when it comes to like community and other people, that like powerlessness, that I can't control them and I can't control the outcome, and like still that pain of rejection is still there. Which is what brought me back to that, like, well, this was my reminder that like I've got to have my own back. I've got to accept me. I've got to not reject myself, because that much I can guarantee. And like everything you're saying, Jazz, is just so like right in line with my birthwork philosophy, because it's that I was attending births and all the processes for the last 3 years, and people hiring me, we hear the narratives that doulas are there to protect you from the medical industrial complex, to improve your birth outcomes, which is statistically, all the data is there that doulas do improve all of that. However, I ended up so many times at a birth where my clients didn't do the prep, and part of it is in the traditional framework where you typically hire a doula and you have like 3 prenatal sessions, and then we show up to your birth, and me being like, oh my gosh, it's not enough because they didn't do the mental prep, and now they're looking at me. I can't help you feel safe. I can't make you feel safe in your body. Only you can do that through practice. I can offer you the toolkit. I can co-regulate with you, put my hands on you, offer like, hands-on therapy, but it's so limited and like it's not. So that I think for me has been shifting from like a victim way of knowing that into sitting into like the gratitude and the opportunity that's like, oh shit, I got my back. And that leaves infinite possibility for like the way I can love myself, for the way I can like affirm myself. So that I think is my like romance, kind of my own experience. Like, wow, how cool. Like I can be an amazing lover to myself. And it was so funny because that's what I was doing last year. And then I went on my first, I started dating somebody and then realizing like, I'm a really satisfying lover to myself. There was nothing wrong at all with this person. Like, physically, all of that was like great, but being reminded like, oh wow, I did a pretty good job and like I'm actually really capable and I know me best. So the fear is still there. Like I know like I'm still, I am separated and still married. And even the thought of vulnerability with my spouse scares me still because there's still that like possibility of rejection after, being rejected so many times. And it's not even wanting to be romantic. It's wanting to, and it's not romantic at the same time, like it's interesting. It's like not wanting, I don't want to partner with you again, but I desire a trust and intimacy as a family that is going to like lay the groundwork for a beautiful like co-parenting relationship. But there's still so much risk in like expressing that desire. Like I've been like holding off on expressing this to my spouse. Like I desire this, but I'm not willing to compromise this other stuff. And that's, I think, the part that's really scary is like, yeah, I really, maybe this like resonates for you, Midori, of like, I really like this with you and I desire something more and I'm not willing to like let that go because of this one person or interaction or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like Saturn return shit for me. It's like I'm thinking about it. It's making me reflect on like, okay, that experience of that relationship dissolving was very dramatic because it kind of had to happen that way. And I can trust that who I am now is not that same person. And the way that I would handle a relationship that was dissolving would be handled differently now because I have more communication skills. I have more regulation skills. Like I have more ability to transition in a way that it isn't just like, I'm going to sell everything and move away. Like, I think like to the way that I had handled that relationship and the ending of the relationship was just like very dramatic because I didn't really know, I didn't have a toolkit. And I didn't have people around me that really, I had flows on this call. Like I had Flo really witnessed me through that. But what felt so dramatic was actually the fact I didn't have the people around me to like really lift me up. I tried to look to my parents to do that and they weren't there. I didn't have the capacity. So now I'm really thinking about it and I'm reflecting. I'm like, yeah, well, I think I have this fear of rebuilding physical material security and safety because I'm afraid of that process, like literally physically dissolving again or like that, sort of intense, like emotional roller coaster that I went through. And I'm like, wait, I'm so much more resource than I was back then. And I can trust that what I build and receiving like money for my gifts and like building a physical sanctuary and like building a partnership is going to be a very different process now. Because I'm different,
And also, like, it all dissolved, and look at you now. Like, look what emerged.
Yeah, it's like our relationship with endings and death in general, because I feel that. Like yesterday, me feeling triggered was like, scorch the earth, burn it all down. Like that is my initial reaction. And that is valid because it's sometimes like that's how I get to an ending and that's how I rebuild quickly. And I think I'm very comfortable with like, well, burn it down and I'll start new. Like for me, that's easy. But it's not, that's doing it in a way that still holds compassion and like my own, I don't know, like you said, like slowing down with the tools, because it is an option. Like we always have that option, but it's making, I think, again, like going back to finding that balance of the tension of like the individualism of it, and then like, okay, but is there a bigger goal here? Is there a contract that I don't want? Like me, sometimes it's out of laziness that this is how I orient myself in conflict. I'm like, if I avoid this and like burn it to the ground with this person, am I gonna have to deal with this contract in another lifetime? Because I'd rather just get it done and not see you again. I gotta say that's a driving motivation for a lot of my like, okay, let's just handle this, because I'm like,
it's gonna come
I don't
back.
want to see you in another lifetime under these circumstances.
Well, yeah, and another part of it is that I was just like, yo, like that was because that was like the first intense experience of me like experiencing like a death in my life of like past self, and that's like the more you get comfortable with those deaths of like self or like identities, really it's identities, like this holding on to a past timeline that feels life shattering. It's like once you cross, and I think this is what the show is about, once you cross over into the first death, identity death, or like the dissolving of self, or the what are we calling it, the unraveling. The unraveling, that first threshold, it becomes a lot easier to unravel in other iterations of self, like that sort of leaving behind.
We're so Scorpio.
I mean,
and it's like death in my head. I'm saying the phrase, death is just a lifestyle.
We're all very pretty Scorpio people. We're Scorpio, Pluto, and Scorpio generation. So I think this will resonate for all of our.
Because it has to. That is, again, the thesis of the show. Like, once you're tapped in, you can't tap out. And once we start getting in our bodies, the less our bodies will tolerate not doing these things and push us toward it and remind us, like, this is part of the process, hun. You've done it before. You're going to be okay. And that's also why we made the show, so that we can have other friends who are doing the same. And again, back to polyvagal theory, like, when we are up here, we are connected. We are experiencing connection with others. When we are down in like the dorsal vagal, like we literally cannot perceive connection to others. And there's only loneliness because our nervous system is like shut down from that ability to feel these other like electromagnetic waves, whatever you want to refer to it as. Like, it is really like, that is where I think the community comes in. It's like, we need people to be like, yes, I see you. Like, yes, you. And because when we get in those states, it is like, that is why in depressive, like I know Midori and I've talked about this, being like intensely depressed before. And I feel like you said that too before, Jasmine. That's like, in that, for me, it was literally the inability to perceive that I was loved. And like intellectually, I knew it. I know my parents love me. I know I hear these words all the time, but I could not feel it. And that was like, all these practices got me back to the place where I was like, oh, that's right. I'm connected with all of you. Which is actually one of the questions. Are you down to shift into questions? I came up with a little list of questions.
Yeah. Can I share like some thoughts that came up hearing you talk?
Please.
I heard, Midori, you're talking about like that old timeline. And it made me think about like your old timeline is going to press up against you. And that gives you a chance to clarify your new one and that new identity that you want to continue embodying. And it has me thinking about tension and contrast and how we might want to befriend contrast a bit more because we need it to see clearly. And that can also help you, or it's helped me not like freak out anytime something doesn't go my way in my reality. Like the perfectionism can really taint the art that is reality creation. That's definitely from P and how they talk about like reality being a medium. And I had to really open up to, tension in my reality, normalizing that, welcoming that, because it's an opportunity for me to get clear on what direction I want to go. And there was something, Siobhan, you acknowledged, your trigger yesterday and the fear of rejection and the powerlessness. And it made me want to say, like, you do not need to heal all your core wounds to live a beautiful life that you desire.
I needed to hear that.
Yo, that's the lesson of Chiron, really.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your sun and
My 8th house,
Sun,
Cancer
South Node,
Chiron.
Sun, Mercury, is that the Chiron is the wound that never heals. And it's actually, just like this open wound. It's like it's constantly going to be like, it's like the bruise that's like constantly going to get pressed upon.
Yeah.
Well,
it's just so fascinating to like feel.
It's both comforting and also a little bit brutal that I'm like,
but yeah,
I'm done with. I'm done fighting with my siblings and parents. Like,
yeah.
But it's funny because we have, like, I've told Midori this, like, it is a lot of this wound around the 8th house, but it's so funny because all of my siblings have like 7th, 8th house, like depending on the system, this thing. And, that's a conversation for another time. Maybe we'll actually have Tiffany on to talk about these different things, because Midori and I talked with, what made me think of Tiff just now?
Astrology?
Something about that concept. Tiffany just told me, Tiffany was my mentor that taught me Reiki, and Midori actually had a reading with her today, and that's what she told me, was like, you are just meant to be on the outside, like that's your life experience. And she said that in, I think, projector terms too, like there's a level of isolation that we have to, in order to do our role, we have to be on the outside, and kind of like come into terms with that, which is funny because we have so many projectors that found each other, which is great. So maybe we're gaming human design over here.
Yeah.
Like, you told us we had to be outsiders, but then we're all gonna band together. Outsiders together.
It's HD projectors and numerology 7s.
It's similar, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
What's your life path, Jazz?
9.
So is that like around death and endings too, kind of? Or I feel like I think of endings when I think of 9, but you tell me.
It's a lot about, I think Flo could say more, but like humanitarian, is that the word? Humanitarianism? Like being here for the people, the collective. Yeah. But I don't know numerology too.
Yeah, I haven't. Completion, universality. I think that maybe I'm thinking of other like number, whatever, but I was thinking like letting go and that energy.
Well, I'm in a personal year 9, so that is definitely a lot of letting go and endings.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love to see it. Well, didn't you also just started your Saturn return?
No. I've Saturn in Aries. Yeah, 0 degrees. I know, 0 degrees. So
dang. Yeah. Wow. I can't wait to see what happens when
warrior timeline.
Lots of unraveling for sure.
Well, because I'm like, my Saturn return went from like, that is what brought me to all of these things a lot more closely, and you've already have the tools, so I'm like, that makes it more exciting, like an exciting opportunity. Hopefully it's gentle. We'll get there when we get there. Jazz, can I ask you?
Yeah,
both of you.
Okay.
What would your 12-year-old self, I'm just picking an age to not be too broad, what would your 12-year-old self be most impressed by, as well as most like shocked, judgy, repulsed by your current self? Like, what would shock your 12-year-old self the most about who you are now, and what would like really excite them? We could say like middle school kind of self. I was going for like that coming of age era.
Yeah. I actually I worked with, middle school, teenage self kind of recently, because current Jasmine, you know, Leo rising, wants to take up space online and be seen and speak and share. And that's a desire of mine, and that feels good. And my teenage self came in and threw a fit and was shocked because 12-year-old Jazz would hide and isolate herself and didn't want to be seen in the spotlight. And I could hear her and feel her be like, "What are you doing? Like, we don't want this. We don't like this. Like, what the hell?" You know, because it's such a new desire for me. And I think child Jazz had that desire and just forgot. But I think that's really shocking to 12-year-old me, is that I voluntarily to show up in ways and share myself. And then something that she's proud of, I want to say my tenderness and the way that I support myself. And when I think about where I've come from, the beliefs that used to structure my reality were feeling worthless and unlovable and hating myself and not feeling like I had anything good to offer. And that consumed me. And I didn't see a future for myself for a long time. Like, I physically couldn't even conceptualize, like, just doing human things. Like, I struggled with eating and sleeping and, you know, so much anxiety and fear. So, like, just to be able to be, like, existing day to day and living and breathing and feeling good and feeling open is just, like, wild to younger me. It's the simple things, really, I think.
Love. Midori, do you have an answer?
I just feel like this is a support group for like who have major Leo placements and didn't feel seen or witnessed growing up, because I feel similarly in that I think it would I mean, even 2 years ago, I told Siobhan this, like, I was terrified of public speaking. Like, I would have to literally write out a script to introduce myself to a group online, virtually.
Yeah.
So, like, that Chiron third house healing, and I know you know that because you have your Chiron. I know you have your Chiron in the third, Jazz, is like really hardcore. And so I'm just really, I think the repulsion of like thinking about my younger self, like thinking about me being very public. I mean, also like sharing how, like, basically how nude I am on it's like showing my body as much as I do is something I'm like would have been repulsed by, and also I think I would have been so intrigued by, to keep it short. Because I definitely, these are like my body and my voice are like two probably of the most sensitive and like vulnerable parts of my like self-image and identity.
Yeah. I feel that.
Mine's totally around that too. I feel like it's definitely Leo healing. I feel like my 12-year-old self would be like, well, they wouldn't know what happened in between. So it'd be like, cool, you're still using your voice without knowing that there was like, that probably middle school was like the last time that I was like singing and performing and taking those kind of roles. And then there was a long period of like silencing myself or just using my voice in really like unhelpful ways, a little bit of like healing the inner cop, honestly, like being judgy and things like that. And then probably most shocking would be like probably just the magical stuff. Like,
yeah.
oh God, you're a witch. Like, when I was I identified as Catholic, like so
definitely that.
I always had this, you know, like I always had this feeling of like a presence, like God's presence, but it was never like, you know, direct. Yeah. Okay, a couple other just fun questions to lead us out here. Favorite divination method?
That's a good question. Can I just say, like, talking to nature?
Yeah, totally. Listening.
I
Oh,
love
yeah.
like talking to water and the trees and like, yeah, I love that.
You're kidding? You're talking to us. They're probably like the two most. We're so animistic.
I know, but I was like, does that count? I think it counts though.
Totally.
We're animists, so yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Midori, what's yours? Your new deck?
You know, I would say the same. That's so. I didn't initially think of that because it's so like innate, but yeah, like I went on a walk yesterday, and sometimes it takes me a lot to get out of the house. Like honestly, I could stay indoors.
Fun.
all
Does that
week.
card come out? Oh,
Oh my
I just
gosh!
cut- I
Yes.
just cut the deck, and this is what's
That's-
there.
Yes.
I was gonna say this particular tarot deck is my favorite. It's called the Cosmic Slumber deck. The sun.
Yeah, for me, it's actually talking. Like, I feel like being under the sun is like, I mean, I'm an Aries, Sun, Mercury. A lot of my planets deposit there. So I'm just like very, and I'm a 12th house sun. So the spiritualization of like solar power, like the feeling of the sun, just that's why I really relate so much to your work. And like the verbiage you use, the vocabulary, the vernacular you use around solar power, because I do feel it's like so connected to the sun. Divination through just laying out in the sun.
Yeah, I was born on a Sunday. What day were y'all born?
Wednesday.
Ooh,
Mercury.
Mercury.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
what about you,
I'm
Midori?
Friday, Venus.
Nice, of course.
Nice.
Okay, Jasmine, what if you could be any sea creature, what would you be?
Oh, I literally like not the biggest ocean fan, so that's a really funny question.
That was gonna be my next question was what element or body do you like connect? What's most resonant for you right now? What element?
You know what? I think right now it might be water. Let me think of an ocean animal. I want to be that. I want to be that immortal jellyfish.
Ooh, I actually don't know mine.
That was my first thought, was the jellyfish too.
Really?
Yeah. But I mean, I think like probably a dolphin because it can have sex.
I love the dolphin. Yeah.
Like it's not a cool animal. Like I don't think I would like want to advertise that to the world because it's just kind of like generic. But dolphins were my favorite animal growing up, and I love sex. So
yeah, I would say I love sea otters. And so I just would say that.
Sea otters are low-key really brutal. Have you seen that? They're like actually
They're
really
awesome.
intense. Yeah. Makes sense.
They're just chill. They're fierce mama, just fierce mammal type of mother and nurturer, I feel like too. Male seahorse, says the fairy god sis in the chat. What about y'all? Dance of Dionysus. We can totally get into this another day. You should definitely stick around. We're here every Wednesday live, but I would love to explain how cards work. Do you have a style icon? Any style icons present, ever present?
No, but I need one. That's a really good question. Because I've been in a phase of rewilding my appearance and my aesthetic and my very first house things. So I'm going to think about that.
If you could put in some words what you think your style is evolving into, what would like some descriptors?
Era.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun and it's more experimental. I mean, I love nature colors. I mostly wear like white, green, blue, brown, pink. But more fun, more Experimental is my word, I think.
Love.
Yeah.
Okay, ancestral meal that you either need to learn how to cook or that there's like no way you're living the rest of your life without knowing and eating. For me, it's sinigang. That's a tamarind soup, Filipino tamarind soup.
Well, we just cooked one last night. So that dish is it's squash. You like take out the insides, and this is a Palestinian dish, and you stuff it with rice and meat, and then you cook it in a yogurt tomato soup. And then we also have a dish, and we picked, so my mom's garden like had that massive cabbage, and I picked it out of the ground and we cooked it. And so we like take each leaf and it's like dolmas, which are grape leaves. You add the meat and rice stuffing and you roll them, and you cook it.
Yum. What do you call it?
Oh, okay. The grape leaves are called warak dawale. The cabbage rolls I forget, and the soup I also forget, because I hear the Arabic version and the Spanish version as well, because my mom was born in Chile. So I always sometimes get them mixed up of like what's the Spanish versus the Arabic word.
I feel that. I love dolmas though. My roommate in college is she is Palestinian. She was my roommate. But her mom, their family owned a deli. So her mom, every time she would go home, she would come back with like the fat Tupperware of dolmas, and that was just like our snack all the time.
Yeah. That's the
great Palestinian food. I feel like there's too many to choose, probably. It's like, and like to pick one recipe. Midori?
I love dumplings. I think they're so. The first time I ever made or ever set up my altar, I had specific instruction from Parisa, a psychic medium friend of ours, to make dumplings. And yeah, just like it's a staple. Dumpling soup, steamed dumplings, boiled dumplings, fried dumplings. Give it all to me.
Dumplings are the food I could live off of.
So versatile.
Yeah, now I kind of want some. And my last question, favorite Spice Girl?
I don't know. I don't like, my brain's really bad at like carrying the names and the knowledge.
Okay, I'll pick a different question then.
Yeah.
What if you were a cartoon character, what would your outfit be? You know how they have like the closet that's the same outfit every day? Yeah. What's your cartoon character outfit?
What's your uniform?
Uniform, that's word.
It's pink and it's like a matching set. It's like pink crop top with like pink skirt, some boots.
Yes, like a monochrome
totally
Bratz doll.
Yes, Bratz doll totally Spies collab.
Yes.
Love.
Ooh.
With like a wand that has like a star at the end.
Ex Sailor Moon. Okay.
Yeah.
Or what is her staff. Oh my god.
Okay, yeah, I want to see this come to life. I think mine is also definitely like monochrome, probably like high-waisted midi skirt with a crop top, monochrome, maybe emerald green with
basically like, Sailor Jupiter.
Yeah, we're just basically Sailor Scouts. Another Midori, what's yours?
Sailor Mars / Kim Possible. Like Sailor Mars if it was more functional. Like I don't want to be flashing people if I'm kicking ass, you know?
Or do you?
It could be a skirt. It could be a skirt. Or I just have really nice underwear on.
I love your little skirts. All right, well that was my last question.
I loved them. Are you on your ball, Midori? You're like,
I am. I was like, this is a little distracting.
Would y'all like to join me in a deliverance of collective message closing out? Whether that is just intuitive jazz or if you have cards. I'm going to pull this last card here, which is It's the sun again.
Wow.
And that was it. Just the sun. And I'll let you know what? Let's make it collaborative. Intuitively, what is the sun telling us today?
I want to read an affirmation that Flo shared with me last night. She pulled this card.
While you do that, Flo's uniform is also monochrome Kim Possible cargo pants fanny pack Air Force One special edition.
Oh, I would love to add in that what's coming through was I think I sent this. This is from we obviously all love Ari, the Dream Mommy. I was reading her solar blog post about the sun and how we are the sun. And like that the sun is the only sustainable power source that we have. And the concept of us being the sun, as in the sun, we are like the sun looking down on Earth, and then we are also the 3D human looking up at the sun, and we're neither the sun nor the 3D experience. Like we're both like, and then the sun even just being the concept of like, yeah, the sustainable power source, the one that literally gives us everything that makes life possible. And I love that. I love thinking about experiencing this 3D form and also not attaching ourselves to it.
Yeah.
Love. This mofo came up again. Every time.
I feel like that just needs to be your like avatar now or something. I don't know. I think he needs something needs to happen there because he just keeps popping up, and
it's just daddy. And so to me, daddy is sun energy.
Yeah.
Sun and King of Pentacles, like I think he comes up so often too. One, he just is obsessed with me. But also I think it has a lot to do like what we were saying about these tools for the body, this mastery of our physical understanding that gives us a grounding foundation to then release it all. And as to me, he is like a constant presence that's like your body, your temple, everything is here. Now go be expansive. Let your spirit just like you can always come home. You can always come home to here. And just back to that conversation around how like I got my back. Like I kind of do feel like that's what he says is like, I got my own back. Like this is solid. Don't even worry about that question because you'll always be there to show up. You can always be there to show up for you. So don't forget it.
I love that. The affirmation is I open new doors to life. And part of my framework is what I call the inner sun. And I imagine our inner sun that we all have like right in our heart space. And it's our spiritual self. It's our connection to spirit and that river of energy and infinite love that we always have access to. And just to remind everyone that we have that resource available to us, and also that we are all powerful creators. And we're all main characters as well.
Oh, tell me twice.
Leo affirmations. We are all the main character.
You are the main character of your life. So what world do you want to build?
Exactly.
Beautiful. Well, Jasmine, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your medicine. Would you like to share before we close out how people can work with you? Plug whatever it is you would like to plug.
Yeah, I think I have a little invitation for everyone listening, and that would be to connect with and greet the parts of you that are uncomfortable with dreams and desires, and get to know what they have to say, get to know their story, and see if you can learn what they need to feel safe, and see if you can create more space to learn what your dreams and desires are. And they don't have to be such like, I don't know, like floaty things. Like you could just have a desire to feel more at home with where you're at in life right now, to feel that assuredness. And so I invite you to journal about the colors that feel good to embody, the sensations that you want to embody, the feelings, what songs remind you of your dream world, and start to see it in your life. I think I use other people as mirrors to show me what my desires are. And so when you look at someone and you see something that you desire or admire, notice like what quality or what trait is that, and see how you can embody that as well. I've made a playlist for my timeline. I've made a Pinterest board, so you can really go all out. But let yourself start wherever you're at. And yes, so you can join my little community on Instagram. I'm at Jazz the Sun Fairy. I like to imagine us all in my tree house, and we're all hanging out, drinking tea and sharing stories and talking about the stories that we're rewriting. And yeah, on my page, I share tools and resources and stories to help you on your self-discovery journey while sharing about mine in real time. And in the link in my bio, you can find some ways to work on me. I offer one-to-one human design readings, timeline jumps, and intuitive guidance sessions. I also have mentorship options that will be available soon to make magic long-term. And yeah, stay up to date with me on there. And I have a website coming out soon, and I have someone really lovely helping me build it. So I'm so excited for that to be out in the world soon.
Aww.
Thank you so much, Jazz. And yes, Jasmine's Instagram, you're so generous with the tools and everything that you share. And so I feel like definitely connect with her over at Jazz the Sun Fairy, because there's something for everyone. I feel like that's something that I love about the way you do your work, is you're just generous of wherever somebody's at, whatever level of access they need, there's something to make that ripple in their life. So thanks for being you. I
Thanks for
so
having me.
cherish you, and thanks for being our first guest.
Yay! I'm really excited for the rest of your guests too. So super looking forward to that, and love what you guys are creating.
Thank you, Jazz.
Yay.
Thank
So next
you.
week we have Chibuzo coming on. The week after that, Willa of Highly Human. And the last Wednesday of this month, the Fairy Godsis. So join for all these conversations, submit questions. You can follow us at With Soft Power on YouTube, on Instagram. And Soft Power we are a emerging collective and community of artists, healers, dreamers, change makers that are currently, we're all these things, but I think currently where we're focusing is just creating intentional media here on YouTube to put out this frequency of possibility. There's so many overlaps. Everything, like, I feel like we could just go on forever with your work and the way that it's just beyond aligned to what we're doing. And that is a commitment we've made with all of our guests. You can always count on every guest to share the values of embodiment and integrity and liberation, incorporating these ancestral magical things with the present moment and the present goal of liberation. So thanks for doing your part. Thanks for contributing your medicine, staying on your journey so that we can all just experience the medicine by witnessing your own embodiment.
Thank you so much. I love you both. Lots of love.
Thank you, y'all.
Bye.
See you next week.